Hi everyone, hopefully you're doing well. This video is going to be covering over the lockdown procedures. For example, say your DTA and even your house. If you had a lockdown, shelter in place to say to some extent, what does that look like and how do you go about doing it? And what are signs of when you should do it? When do you lift the lockdown and how do you go about doing that? How do you communicate with the individuals in the facility and those outside the facility. So we're going to talk about that. You can check on our website. There is a lockdown procedure sheet on there that talks about lockdown and some little checkpoints that you can go through that'll help you to be more effective in developing your lockdown. So first thing is, what constitutes a lockdown? What is it? And basically it's when a facility, a building, hardens its exterior. All doors and windows are closed and you limit access into that building. It's basically at home at nighttime when you go to bed, you lock all your doors and your windows and you restrict and limit those that can enter the building. So that's what it is. So in your facility, every facility is going to be a little bit different. Everybody has different entrance procedures and policies and points into your building. So you'll have to look at each of those individual entry points. How can you secure them? How can you lock them and prevent somebody else from coming in? At the same time, and in doing that, when you lock it, making sure that person that is safe who's going up there to lock the door. So an example would be if you have a window next to your door and you have to go up and lock the door, you'd want to cover that window so somebody couldn't see you locking the door. Plus, once that door is locked, they're not going to be able to see into the building. So it's enhancing your safety. So that's what you need to look at. And then how do what are the different types of lockdowns that there are? There's, a firm, hard lockdown where nobody's allowed to come in. There's a lockdown where only authorized people are allowed to come in. And same thing with leaving the facility. And how do you track those entering and leaving your building? So we're going to look at those types of things. Um, what does the lockdown look like in your facility? Okay, you lock all your exterior doors. Now you also want to lock down, harden individual rooms within your building. For example, in the office area, you have an entry pointer where people can enter into the office. And now if you go into a lockdown, you want to lock that entry door. Then you would also want to be able to lock the office that you were in. Can you do that? Can you lock that office room? And then if you lock that office door, now you're in that room where it's the safest location you can be at in that room. And also make sure you have a little supplies within that room for yourself. Bottled water, little munchy foods or something like that. So if you're in there for an hour or 2 hours, something like that, you have some refreshment resources to help you be healthier in that event. So now you take that and move it over to your facility where you're caring for your clients. Are there rooms that you can move clients and staff into to they can be safe within, and lock the door and lock and cover up any windows looking into that room to keep people safe in there. Now comes the really difficult part. You take a group of individuals and you move them into one particular room. How do you keep them safe? How do you keep them, I don't want to say quiet, but reduce the noise in there? How do you support those individuals in there that say they feel safe and they feel secure, and also where their anxiety is not going through the roof? Like my son Zachary, putting him into a room and locking the doors and the windows so he can't see out, his anxiety is going to go up. His autism is going to kick in more. So he needs something to decompress him. So one of the mechanism is he has an iPad that he could watch Thomas the Tank on. And he has earbuds that he can put in his ear so now he can hear that, so he's not creating more noise and drawing attention to that room, because that's one of the things you want to do is limit the noise coming from that room, because you don't want, say you have an intruder that came into the building, You don't want to create noise to attract attention to yourselves and bring that individual to you. So you want to try to keep quiet. So how do we do that? And those are things that you need to, your staff and leadership need to talk about and figure out, how can we do this in a safe manner? How can I, as leadership, support your staff in caring for these individuals in a lockdown procedure? And also, what are some of the items that they may need in that lockdown room to care for their clients, also care for themselves if they're in there for an hour or 2 hours or something like that. So those are the things you need to think about. Another thing is who activates a lockdown and how do you do it? Can anybody activate a lockdown? And what's the process? How do you notify the staff that we're going into a lockdown? So those are some things you need to talk about doing that. To me, in my personal view, anybody should be able to activate a lockdown. So if I'm, for example, caring for a group of individuals and I see an individual in the back of the building, behind the building, and just looks really suspicious, looks aggressive or whatever like that, I should be able to activate a lockdown to protect myself and the clients I'm working with, to get resources, the police, to respond, to investigate that individual and see what's going on. So, but what's the process? Who would I notify, and how do we let others in the facility, in the organization, know we've gone into a lockdown? I personally think one of the best methods that you have available to you is the simple iPhone or any phone text message groups. Create groups of individuals that you can text to each other and share information real quick and easy, because all your staff's carrying their phones around with them. So why not utilize that form of communication so that you can just let everybody know real quick? So excuse me. So, and also, who's responsible for what during the lockdown? Okay, Joe over here, he's responsible for this, and he reports to Mary, who oversees John and Mark and this other group over here. So now we're working on span of control. You have 3 individuals reporting to one person who then can report to leadership or management, however that may work. So you want to make sure you have a clean distinction of who reports to who and what's the format, how do we go about doing that. So, and also what you can do in text messaging is you can be in contact with those outside the facility, say in the leadership, to let them know what's going on, and then they can communicate back. And that brings us to making sure who's in command, who's in charge at every level, from the individual caring for the clients all the way up to who's in charge of the whole organization, the boss, the owner, the CEO, or whatever. But we need to make sure everybody knows who's in charge at different levels. So the next one we're talking about is making sure everybody knows where they fit in that command system. Remember, in the incident command system, we have a video at coyotecrisis.org where it talks about, it's a short 45 50-minute video that talks about incident command and how it works, and especially this is geared strictly towards the DTAs. So make sure everybody watches that and understands how incident command works, so they know where they fit in the organization and who they communicate to and who's in charge of them. You don't want somebody outside of their boss trying to tell them what to do, because then that causes confusion and we're not going to be effective, and we're hindering our safety, everybody's safety. So next thing to talk about is how do you communicate with off-site family and support system? Okay, say for example, my son's DTA, they go into a lockdown, and all of a sudden I hear on the news that his facility went on a lockdown because of a bad guy in the area shooting or something like that, or there's a wildland fire, or there's a flood, something like that. So they went into a lockdown. I want to know what's going on. I want to make sure my son's safe. So how can the organization communicate with me? Okay. In Arizona, the DTAs, day treatment agencies, you're able to be part of the Arizona Health Alert Network, also known as AZ-HON. And there'll be other videos coming out on this that shows you how to go about becoming part of it. There's some training that you have to take, but it's a highly effective form of communication where you could set up groups of individuals in your organization and you could communicate them in one blast. You communicate voicemail, text messaging, email, and fax all at once, and also the individual can communicate back to you effectively too. So that's for Arizona. And if you, I encourage you to become part of it. If you don't, and you're not part of in Arizona, you just use your phones. Create little groups that you can communicate with. You know, you could take John's group of clients that he supervises and he cares for, and find out from their family members or support system who you can communicate with, and get their cell phone numbers, create a little group so he can communicate with them. But then also make sure that John's supervisor has that information too. So if John's not there, they can communicate with them. Or if John's not able to communicate with them, that they can communicate with that individual. But then I can also communicate back and find out what's going on to make sure, because I want my son to be safe. And the police may not want all these family members, support people come running to that DTA to pick up their loved ones, because now they're could be in the danger zone or enhancing the threat to that facility. So we want to control that. So it's very, very crucial that we have an effective communication system in place and everybody knows the communication process. All right? So that's one of the big things. And then what's the backup system? Okay, say the cell phones aren't working and we know that. How are we going to communicate with the family members' backup? Could be the individual phone call. Could you set up, email blast that you groups, you send them out email. Okay, that's why the AZ-HON really works, is because it does the email, it does the voice, it does the text messaging all at one. So you got 3 forms of communication right off the bat being sent out. And if the individual happens to have a fax machine, like we still do, you could send me a fax. Doesn't mean I'm going to get the fax unless I'm at home, but the other 3, you get right on your cell phone. So want to make sure you have that. Okay, and then also as leadership, talking to leadership now, make sure you support your staff. Make sure your staff knows what's expected of them, and that you support them in reaching and maintaining those expectations. Okay, because it's a stressful event in a lockdown. It's difficult when you're having to work with these clients in a more contained environment than normal. Okay, so we want to do those kind of things. And then also, what's the expectation of the clients? Okay, here's a little out of the box thinking. It's practice lockdowns. Build it into the individual service plan. Start doing a practice mock lockdown once a month to make it part of their routine. So if you ever have to do it, they're going to be more adapt to it because they're familiar with it. Okay, we all know that the population that you work with likes routine. They don't really like change. So if we build into their routine fire alarms, evacuation, lockdowns, those kind of things, then they're going to be more compliant and have a healthier outcome and be easier to do those events if they practice them. Okay? So we need to start thinking about those kind of things. So, and then the final thing to ask is, who terminates the lockdown? And what does that process look like? And when do you? Okay? So this is very crucial, because now we need to make sure we have a relationship with our local first responders, fire and police, because most likely they're going to be the ones releasing the lockdown, because they're the ones that are going to be mitigating, taking care of the bad guy, to say, or the threat, removing it from us. Okay, so we need to find out, who do we report to? who in the organization is going to reach out and be that connection to the first responders? And do the first responders know who that person is within the organization? Okay, that's coming back to ICS, Incident Command System. So we need to pre-establish that beforehand. Okay, it could be just a simple phone call to your local police department, fire department, stopping at the police department, fire station, talking with them, and just sort of start building that relationship. Okay, and letting them know, hey, we do have a lockdown procedure. This is what it's like. Share it with them so they know how it's going to work and they can become part of it. Because I know as a fireman, I'd love that. I love knowing my local area, my first due area of different organizations and what their processes are for a lockdown. Because it's going to make my job easier and I'm going to be able to communicate more effectively with them during those events. So now, so the lockdown gets terminated. The police say, hey, everything's safe. Great job, lockdown. We're going to you guys terminate it. How do you send the message out to your staff and clients, and then sending the message out to the family and support system of those individuals? Okay, how's that process going to work? Now, the final thing it's called an after action report. You as the organization and the leadership need to come up with a sheet, and you can check on our website. We have a couple of them you can look at. Is grading how did the work lockdown go? How did it work? What were some of the strengths? What were some of the weaknesses? So that we can prepare for the next one and be more effective. Okay, because that's what all this is all about. Is everybody being safe, but improving next time we have to go through this and do it, that we're going to be better at it. Okay, so I just encourage you to keep practicing, keep talking about it, and doing it. So that's it on lockdowns. It's a quick little less than 20-minute video talking about it. If you got questions or anything, send them to me. My email and phone number is going to come up. Let us know, reach out. If you want to be part of the DTA project and want more information, and reach out to us, because we're about reaching out to you because you're caring for this population, and we're there to support you because we want everybody to have a healthy outcome in the event of a disaster. And the only way that's going to happen is by through collaboration and practicing together. So as a father of a child that goes through DTA, adult son, thank you for doing what you're doing, caring for this population, and be safe. Thank you.